Hello Velociraptors and welcome. In this video I'm going to go a little more in depth into what is associated with the McKinney Falls Project. Now feel free, there's a copy of this presentation on Blend, there's a handout that you can take notes on and annotate, and feel free to reference this video as many times as you need to as you're working through the project. Now the McKinney Falls Project is made up of a few components. The first one is taking that virtual adventure, so going on the virtual excursion, taking down your ground truth points. Then you're going to use that information to interpret the geology of the state park. You're going to create a cross-section or profile from a particular location in the park, and then you're going to write up a geologic history of the area. And we're going to do this in a series of steps that you work through and kind of create this final project of McKinney Falls. Now the first step is the virtual adventure. Now before you get started with the virtual adventure, you need to prepare yourself. First, you need to locate this handout and print out this handout. Print it out to maximize your space. So fill the entire 8.5 by 11 sheet that you can, because it will help you to take notes down as we work through the video. Now you'll see that there's a left and a right hand side panel. The left hand side panel contains the aerial map as well as contour lines. This is the side that you're going to use as you work through the video. The right hand side is just the topographic map minus the aerial photograph. And that's what you're going to use to create your final project on. So you're going to need both sets of that. Then you're going to go ahead and watch the virtual excursion. On the virtual excursion, they're going to take you through step by step, plotting different ground truths as well as definite and inferred contacts. Definite being that we definitely know it's there, it's a solid line, or we're inferring it based on some information in the field, which we'll use a dash line for. And we're going to plot all that information down on the left hand side of the handout. The other thing that you're probably going to want is another separate sheet of paper that you can take notes on while you watch the video. So you're going to pay attention to when the teachers are discussing different types of formations, different key features, because that's going to help you create the geologic history at the very end of the project. So watch the virtual excursion, fill out the information. Once you have all of that information down, you're going to move on to interpreting the geology. The first step that you're going to want to do is transfer all your ground truths and contacts from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. I would go ahead and then begin trying to interpret the geology. So very much like you did in the topographic mapping activity, where we gave you ground truth and you had to kind of estimate, well, where's 100 foot, even though there's not a 100 foot ground truth point. You're going to do the exact same thing here in this illustration. You're going to try to figure out where the pieces fit to make the geologic map. Now, you're going to need some help with that. So there's several hints here to help you in forming your lines. Please make sure you're reading through these hints, you're looking through it, try to make sense of it. You can always map it out, always do it in pencil first, map it out in pencil, kind of look at it, see if it follows the hints before you come and see me for help, because I want to see that you tried it. You're trying to think it through. It's much better for you to come to me and say, hey, I see this hint. I'm wondering, am I maintaining this law between these two places? Does this make sense that I'm going to put this here because of this? Instead of just saying, hey, is this right? That doesn't help me as much because, one, I want to see that you're trying to think through it. It's not going to be necessarily easy, and some of it's also up to impartial interpretation. Some pieces. Most of it will kind of help you with the contour lines, and you'll see that after you get the ground truth points. Now, once you've interpreted your geology, you've got your geologic map, you've come to see me, and I've said, yes, this geologic map looks good, you can move on to the next step. You're going to work on creating a profile. Please make sure that you get approval from me before you can move to this step, because I want to make sure that your geologic map is relatively right. Actually, I'm going to check to see if it's right before you do this one, because I want your profile to be correct based on your geologic map. It will have slight variations, of course, between everybody's, because it depends on your interpretation, which is okay. Then what you're going to do is create a topographic profile and then a geologic profile along the A prime to A line. Make sure that you're doing it from A prime to A on your geologic map. Now before, when I had to create a topographic profile and a geologic profile, I gave you the the chart that you use to plot it on. You're going to have to make all of that given this particular specification. So I need the elevation range from 400 to 600. I want the interval at 10 feet, and I want the vertical exaggeration to be 10 times. Now that, at first, what you're gonna need to do before you create your profile at all, you're gonna need to actually create the chart that you're gonna plot it on, which might take you a minute. The key pieces that you need to pay attention to is that vertical exaggeration. Think about how we calculated the vertical exaggeration. Use this scale on the actual handout that came for the video, because that scale will help you determine what the scale should be for your actual illustration that you're going to draw. But again, make sure that it's A prime to A. Don't flip it backwards. Okay, and you'll label that on there. There's also some hints here to help you as you're working through to figure out what might be occurring. Please make sure that you're using a straight edge. Do not freehand your lines. Use some type of straight edge. I know you're at home, you might not have access to a ruler. Hopefully you do, because you're going to need it. You need some type of measuring device. If not, you can kind of estimate it, and we can work with that if we need to. Just come see me and we can figure it out. But make sure that you're following the hints as you move through the steps to create your profile. The last step that you're going to do is, once you've got your geologic map done, you've created a profile, now you want to use that information plus the notes that you took during the video to write up a geologic history of the area. That's going to include, remember, the formation of rock layers, any erosional periods, any time that a fault is occurring, intrusions, crosscuts, volcanism, sea level changes, and time periods. As much information as you can get from the video, of course, to write that geologic history. Make sure to use any of your old materials. So when we wrote the geologic history for Shoal Creek, when you were looking at it for Boulder Creek or Boulder, Colorado, look at those information as you're trying to prepare your geologic history. And that will be your last piece of the project. Once you finish them, I want you to compile it together, make it look nice. As you can see here, I want to ensure that you'll see right panel is taped to this page. You'll see that I have a key for you to follow in terms of how I want you to color in your geologic map. Make sure on your field key that you're providing descriptions of the actual layers. You're providing the scale, types of data I've given you, because that's just what you're recording on their direct contacts or inferred contacts. Ensure that your vertical exaggeration is indicated. It's labeled A prime to A in terms of your formatting. So that would be the two piece. The second page or the third page you're going to attach is going to be that typed up geologic history of the area. And then you compile all three of those plus your notes from the video as your submission to me for the project. Now, of course, make sure as you're going through it, I would do this each section. So once you finish the geologic map, I would check to make sure you've met all the expectations in the rubric and then move to the next piece. So then by the end of it, you're relatively fine in case of getting that checked with me. So my goal, I think and we'll talk about review and me reviewing your projects in class. But that's a little more in depth of looking at the project, what's expected of you, what you need to complete. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or jump through the video as you see necessary. Thanks for tuning in.